Good morning, everyone. It's Kim from the Shamrock Quilt Studio, and today I'm talking a little bit about the tools that I use for hand quilting. If you caught our video on a recent Friday show, you saw how I was loading our Blue Star quilt onto the Grace EZ3 frame, and that frame is located in a different part of my house. So I don't want to be running back and forth to get the tools that I need. So right after this, I'm going to show you what I put together to take down and keep by the frame. We'll be right back. And welcome back to the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Well, hi and welcome back. Now let's talk about those tools we're going to need to do our hand quilting. And the first thing we're going to start out with is our quilting thread. Now on this project I am going to use the Americana, and I'm going to use a thread in just a white color. And mostly what I'm going to be quilting is the white parts of this quilt. I may change my mind and decide to do stitching in the blue areas, but for now we're just going to be focusing on those white areas. So the white thread will do a great job of blending in with that. So I'm going to take down a roll of that thread. Then I'm also going to need a pair of scissors to cut that thread. And I love these little Ginger lightweight, I think they're 4-inch scissors. They're very small, they're very lightweight, they've got a nice sharp point on them, and they cut thread really well. I also like these because I can use a pen and stick in the fabric, and most of the time they can just hang on the project and not get lost. So those are my scissors of choice. I'm also going to take down a little container of beeswax. And for this project, I'm going to take down the one little small one. And what I've done is I've taken one of those large quilting pins and I've stuck it in through the wax in one of the areas that you would slide the thread in. And I should be able just to put that onto the fabric that's hanging on that frame and hold it in place as well. The key here is that all your tools are close at hand and you don't have to go looking for anything. Next up is a thimble. Now, for me, those are really important, and I have two things I'm going to take. Most likely, what I'm going to be using the most is going to be these little adhesive pads that are made out of suede, and I have a little place right here on my finger which I tend to use to push the needle in, and those will really help with that. Let me see if I have one. Yeah, I do. With the full package, so you can see exactly what that looks like. It's called a thimble pad, and that's what I'll be taking down. Okay, so we've got thread, we've got thimbles. Oh, and the other one, I'm going to take down this new thimble that I have and try to use that as well. I am still trying to get used to this. I really do like it because it allows my nail to be exposed or not confined in the thimble, and I'm hoping that that will be better for my nail. I have a lot of problems with that particular nail. So I will be taking that as well. Now, needles. I keep my needles in these two little boxes. I have one box that's for machine needles, and I'm going to open that up just briefly so you can see. All of my machine needles are there either in a container or loose. If it's something I've used and I have a problem with it, I throw it away. But if I've maybe used it for a seam or two, mending something, I'll try to put it back in the same container, but sometimes they get separated from that and I don't know what it is, so it'll just be loose in there. And then I have hand stitching needles in a similar container, and it is marked. And I have a lot of different selection in here. I tend to use the embroidery needles a lot, but I use those more for applique and for EPP. For quilting, I normally use a between. And let's see, I have a couple of betweens here in these French needles. And then I have a couple of packages of the Dritz betweens. And what I've selected this time is I've selected a number 7 needle, and I've taken one in the French bohine maybe, I'm not sure, needle, and I've taken one from the Dritz Quilters Between. The difference as I see it, they're about the same size around, the same thickness. They're exactly the same length because they're all a number 7. The Dritz has a little bit bigger eye, and with the Americana thread, because it is glazed, you may need a little bit bigger eye, so that's the one I'm taking. That's also one of the reasons that I will use the embroidery needles, because they have a bigger eye, they're easier to thread, and they're easier to work with when you're working with applique. So let's put these away real quick, hopefully. Let's see if we can get that to close. We can, good enough. All right, so we've covered thread, scissors, thimbles, beeswax, needles. The only other thing that I'm going to need, and because I don't use a rocking stitch normally, I use something similar to a stab stitch, and I like to use a little guide when I'm stitching. And for that, I like to use the gridded mylar, and I find this at Joann's. I think they might have it at Michael's, and they may have it at Hobby Lobby, but the ones I have right now came from Joann's. And they are made from Dritz, so you probably could order them online as well. This has a little grid, and it's actually a little 1/4 inch grid, and then it has dotted 1/8 inch inside that grid. And what I'm going to do is I cut a line, or cut a piece of this about 1.5 inches wide, and I tried to use the factory edge here so I know it's exactly straight and relatively smooth. And I used a X-Acto knife to score it, and then I used some utility scissors to cut it. And I tried to cut it as smooth and straight as I could right along that line. Now, how I'm going to use this, I'm going to use my hole punch and punch 2 holes, probably at the end, in the middle, and on the other end. And I'll use those 2 holes because they'll be really close together with one of these large quilting pins to pin it to my quilt. And then I can use this factory edge here to sew along. And in this particular quilt, there's going to be a lot of straight lines, some angles, but mostly straight lines. And I can use this as a guide to, number 1, keep my lines straight, and number 2, also gauge whether the length of the stitch is consistent along the line of stitching. I find for me this is the best way. With stab stitching, sometimes you don't get nice straight runs of stitches because you're not rocking it. You're stabbing in and stabbing out, stabbing in and stabbing out, and that tends to make them go a little wonky sometimes. So this helps me greatly. And then I'm also going to take down a small ruler just in case I have some questions about maybe where the center of something is. I can use this, but I'll have this as well. And with both of these, they can be affixed to the quilt top, either by some straight pins or just by sticking this in to where the roll is on the frame. So that's going to be my tools that I take down to the quilting frame. And I'm going to just line, oops, I forgot to put those away. Just going to line these up for you so you can see what's here. And that's going to be my little toolkit for quilting. Now, as we go along, there may be some other things we need. Sometimes I find that having maybe a little awl is helpful if I need to get that knot in my thread popped underneath a seam, I can sometimes use this to kind of open it up and then stitch through. Or if I need to reach into the edge and pull out a stray thread, that's helpful. And this little small crochet hook sometimes can be helpful as well. I have seen a tool on the market that is like a micro crochet hook with a really pointed end that's designed so that you can poke it in through the fabric and grab that stray thread and pull it back out. To me, it looks like a cross between a crochet hook, a latch hook for a rug, like a rug, and a needle. And like they put all those things together, made it really, really small so you can do that. And that is very helpful because sometimes you will get those threads underneath your quilt top and you can really see them through the front. I have used straight pins and needles in the past to try to capture that and pull it back through. You just kind of have to figure out what works for you. So those are our tools for our hand quilting, and we will be starting on that within a few days. So you should see some videos or some shorts on that coming up on the channel soon. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and be sure to subscribe. And we'll see you next time at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Have a great day.